Warning, warning, warning. This episode might just save your sanity. If you're a teacher battling the daily grind, prepare for a mindset makeover that'll have you asking, why didn't anyone tell me this sooner?
It's the Happy Music Teacher!
Are you an elementary music teacher who's frustrated and overwhelmed? I'm Jeanette, a happy music teacher who loves teaching every day, but it wasn't long ago I was in your shoes. Join me Wednesdays to help you find happy in your music classroom. So today we have Kevin Mecchella, and I'm going to first of all start by welcoming Kevin to the podcast.
Jeanette, thank you so much for having me. This is awesome. Really happy to be here.
Tell us a little bit about your background as I know you said you were a classical musician, and just a little bit about a snippet of your life, if you will.
Sure. So again, I am a euphonium player. For all you general music people out there, gold stars for the, it's not a baritone horn. Come on now.
My son played the euphonium. He marched the euphonium one year.
Oh, nice.
My nephew who is seventh grade is playing the euphonium.
Look at that. Future Stephen Mead stars there. Perfect. So that kind of is where I cut my teeth on. I wanted to play the trombone when I first, got introduced, but my little arms were too short for that 6 and 7 position. So he, handed me the euphonium, picked it up and fell in love with it, kind of made a lifelong journey out of it. Now, when I went to college, I actually stayed local because I wanted to specifically work with a band director that I just kind of wanted to work with. It was one of those all-state conferences that he conducted and yada, yada. So I stayed local and had a great experience, but I majored in music education. And it was one of these things where in 9th grade, I actually, even earlier in 5th grade, I remember my mother, in all her amazing, good-intentioned heart, said to me, I think you would be a great teacher. You're just like Mr. Julian, your 5th grade teacher. He's so great. He's so sweet. You're just so sweet. And, again, my mother was amazing. She, but what it did was planted a seed. And then later on in life, in 9th grade, I heard Joe Fantozzi play that trumpet, and he went off to, Boston Conservatory, and he was an incredible senior when I was a freshman. I heard that thing play. I was like, whoa. All right, I want to do something with music. I didn't know, I was into it, but this is like a whole nother level. So I decided, well, I can't really be a musician because, how can you make your money as a euphonium player? There was some truth to that. But I went to be a music teacher because I thought that was the appropriate, answer to live a life that you want, which it was. And I don't knock it. That was fantastic. But, throughout college, I was a very serious, music education student and won awards and all this great stuff. Fine. But when I got into the real world and you start teaching, like I said, my 4-building music program with incredibly difficult administrators, demanding community, it was a very eye-opening experience. And, I wish while I had that experience, I had other very positive experiences too. I was in other different districts and trying to find my home. But it's one of these things where I think there are two sides to students as they're growing up. There's two things happening. One, where kids say, I am going to be this and nothing else. I'm devoted. I'm dedicated. Boom. And they kind of almost tunnel vision their way through high school. And then there's other kids who have no idea what they want to do, which, there's no right or wrong. But for me, I was tunnel vision. And it might have not been appropriate because I think what I do now, it took me many, many years to figure it out as a youth speaker, running my own business, still working with districts and being able to get in front of kids and teach in a way. But make it as creative and exactly how I want it. I get to perform. I get to, rewrite my program if I want. I get to sell merchandise. Like it's a whole thing. And I never knew I would be loving business. I love being an entrepreneur. I love it, love it, love it. So I think, that is my story. And then real quick, I know I'm rambling here. The middle part of this whole turning point of how I got into this was that I had such negative experiences with, public education, and I had such stress because my entire identity was wrapped up as we talked about earlier. And so dealing with those emotions, the easiest way I knew how, not healthy, but easiest way, drinking, stay out and all out of hours of the night, doing dangerous and illegal things with my buddies, led me to fall asleep at the wheel because I was so exhausted. Got into a major car accident where the car in front of me flipped on its roof. And I asked
Oh.
myself at this point, something needs to change.
Mm-hmm.
So at that point, after about 12 to 18 months figuring out what I needed to do, that's where I ended up doing my master's work at the Royal Liège Conservatory in Belgium. So that
Wow.
experience in Belgium was the absolute most life-changing thing I've ever gone through, for the positive, incredible, both career-wise and personally, and now I'm off to the races. So yeah.
That's amazing. That is what an amazing story.
For myself as a previous K through 12 music teacher, specifically a band director, I do primarily now in my career speak to high school students about positive decision making. But what is a passion of mine is, and again, granted that talking about positive decision making to high school students falls under the umbrella of mental health. And I always tell people like mental health is expanding. We got a lot of things that students are dealing with, but if they can learn how to make better decisions on, granted, as small as like what do we have for breakfast, to as large as what college do I go to, what do I major in, do I get in that car, like all these different things, or even so abstract as what do I decide to think about myself, what do I decide to think about others? These are all decisions. But what is really passionate about me, and I love when I get a chance to speak to people. So when I listen to your podcast, I'm like, this would be great. Is the mental health of adults too, and especially
Mm.
teachers and music teachers in particular, because obviously we have that background. But it is unlike anything else. When you think about it, and when I think about my first experiences as a band director, I was in four buildings as a 22-year-old kid.
Oh
Four
my God.
buildings. I had inventory of every, I mean, my own. It wasn't like students were coming with instruments. Um, I was expected in 3 months to put on concerts for the entire four different concerts. Like it was the incorrect job. Like, let's just put it that way. It was absolutely absurd. Um, and that was the beginning. And that was probably the catalyst of an incredible amount of mental stress and small mental breakdowns, if you will, for me, because I
Yeah,
put my entire identity in my career as a music teacher,
of
as many
course.
of us do.
Of course, that I mean to like kindergarten through 12th grade, you've got all of them. And you're trying to navigate all those different age groups. And as elementary teachers, most of my audience is elementary teachers. We think it's tough going from pre-K through fifth grade or pre-K through sixth grade. But when you add on those middle schoolers who are a challenge,
Just
and
to say
then
the
you add
least.
on the high schoolers and the middle and the high schoolers, I mean, we're seeing those mental health challenges all the way through, but I feel like they get even worse in especially middle school. It's such a hard time of your life to navigate. And I am very passionate about mental health. My older son is a licensed mental health counselor and a marriage and family therapy
Oh, wow.
therapist, but he has really taught me so much about just watching my children navigate growing up and watching them navigate all the things. And you are right that we as musicians, first of all, and second of all, as music teachers, we have this, you grow up with, oh my gosh, I can't make a mistake. And
Yes.
that note is wrong. And oh my gosh. And then, so we have to give ourselves permission to make mistakes, but we also have to give our students the permission to make mistakes. And that's really a hard thing to do because, especially someone my age, I really grew up in that hardcore, like, we don't make mistakes
Right,
kind of
right.
atmosphere. And I hope that it's eased up a little bit, but I don't know, you'd probably know better because you're kind of in the trenches with the teenagers.
Well, so in the music world, I'm not exactly sure. I mean, so the music world in particular, when we're talking about making mistakes as an ensemble or something like that, actually, so yeah, let me rephrase my thoughts. Yeah, both perspectives. One, as a human individual, we're much more accepting of mistakes. almost to a fault, I believe. And I'll explain that in a second. But to go on the ensemble route, one thing we've learned, I'm not sure if you're familiar with Dr. Tim Lotzenheiser. He's a Con Selmer guy, and he is a big speaker, author, and he talks about student leadership, mostly probably secondary level. And
Is he a band guy, real
yes,
like vivacious? Yeah, I've seen
yes,
him speak twice, and
okay.
I want to just live at his house so that I can get lots of knowledge from him because he's amazing.
Dr. Tim's a great guy. Yeah, and you could tell he does it for the right reasons. But what he is so good at talking about is like reframing the idea of why we're even teaching in the first place. Like that, okay, I'm the man with the baton, so I'm the leader. So you watch me. I've got my music. You've got yours. Did you practice? Like, and that aggressive type of like almost like like brick wall against a brick wall type of thing, right?
Mhm.
Where instead of we can work together with the students and actually accept the fact that they've got their own life going on, they've got their own struggles going on. Like this should be a fun outlet, this should be an exciting outlet. That will be the only avenue to get these students to actually practice more efficiently, and have a better longevity in that program, whatever it may be. So that is I think we've definitely eased up on that type of old school mentality of like, we're gonna win the competitions. Like, all right. uh, which by the way, there's a great place for that. Now,
Absolutely.
when it looks at holistically with students, I think we've actually eased up to almost to a fault where we are terrified to as educators in the global sense to hold our students accountable, because they can come back and say,
Mhm.
well, it's my anxiety, it's this and that, which I'm so glad we have these things diagnosed and we have so many resources to help students. But at the same time, I think we're missing the other end of that, or the other side of that coin, which is resilience, accountability, and these very important aspects of life that we're trying to prepare our students for. So that's my 2 cents on it.
Yeah, yeah. We talked earlier about teacher mental health, and
Mhm.
I really feel like that's where we should focus
Yeah.
because, and I do want to get into a little bit of our kiddos and
Yeah, for sure.
how to help them and that sort of
Oh
thing.
yeah, yeah.
But let's talk first about teacher mental health and what are your thoughts on that?
I have a lot of them. I
I figured you probably would.
there's a lot of things going on here. There is angles that you could look at from the teacher themselves, and the things that they have to reactively and proactively do to manage their mental health as well as physical health. And then there's the administration, and there are things that we can't that are not even really worth discussing, but I think they're worth just kind of a little light brushstroke, because some of the things that we're dealing with and right now as an education as the education zeitgeist, if you will, we're dealing with such issues that are outside of our control and that are
Mhm.
outside of our administrators' control. We are dealing with coming off of COVID that reshaped our entire way we look at education. And
Yep.
unfortunately, they're getting a lot of people around the world who are looking at like us, we're the bad guys for whatever reason. So the now is the time where if anyone's ever going to be stressed about being a teacher and an effective teacher, it's now.
Yep.
So that's definitely something to think about. And when I mention administrators, the only thing I think they can do, because again, they have bosses to answer to, and even the
Hmm.
highest one has to answer to the taxpayers. So we get it. But I think the only other thing we have to is they can work at is acknowledging what their teachers are going through, but on a very intentional level. If I
Hmm.
say to an AP, say, "Do you know what your teachers are dealing with?" Like, of course. But had that morning, did they remind themselves? Did they read a mantra that said, "My teachers are blah blah blah. They're the hardest working people. They're dealing like so." That intentionality sometimes is lost because they're dealing with their own mental health. We get it.
Right,
Everybody's got their
right.
thing. When it comes to the proactive side of what we can do from a teacher's perspective, I think the first thing we need to do is take care of ourselves.
Hmm.
And this is one of the hardest things we can do because we're so wrapped up in our in our career and our day to day of writing lesson plans, actually teaching, grading, whatever it may be, rehearsing, learning scores. Fine. The problem is we need a weekend. We need one weekend to reset. And what we're going to do on this reset weekend is, first of all, create an incredible amount of space. So that's maybe physical space, go somewhere and go, rent a hotel room. I don't care. Go on a little trip by yourself somewhere, go to the Hamptons. I don't care, whatever. Get away and take a notebook. And you're going to start writing everything that's in your dome and just get it out of your head and get it onto paper. Because, and whatever that looks like, there's no way of doing it, but just write what's just, we call it journaling, call it whatever it is, but get it out. Because once you get everything out, you have clear space to think. And then once you have clear space to think, you can think about how we want to manage ourselves on a day-to-day basis. And this is where the practicality thing comes in. We have to make sure that we are treating ourselves well before we treat our students well. When the airplane's crashing and the masks come down, we got to put on ours first, okay? So what we do is every morning before we go to school, we have to take care of ourselves within a morning routine. This could look like a 15-minute little, meditation, mantra, breathing exercise. This could be an incredible 2-hour long thing where we go to the gym and we practice our instrument, whatever we do, right? Whatever we want to do for ourselves, journal, whatever. Well, Kevin, 2 hours, are you kidding me? I'd have to wake up, yes, at 4:45, and that's what I used to do. So I'm not asking you to do that, but I'm asking you to invest in yourself first before you invest in your students.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. When I was teaching full time, I woke up every day at 5 a.m. and I did about an hour of a workout. And for me,
Nice.
I needed that. I
Yeah.
needed that time. And it really was a mindset for me to be like, okay, and I did it from the time my kids, they weren't little when I started it. And it's definitely more of a challenge when you have little kids, but
Sure.
kids tend to put themselves on a schedule. So if you are listening and you have small children, they're probably on some sort of a schedule, and you're probably like getting up and getting into your crazy, I don't know, let's say by 6, maybe it's 5:45. So even if it's 5 minutes of
Mm-hmm.
breathing that
Mm-hmm.
you do, and that's how I started working out again, is I was, as a young mom, I wasn't working out at all. And it really affected me because I
Yeah.
had always been very physically active. And so I went with 7 minutes in the morning, and I would wake myself up 7 minutes early. And that's how I did for a while. And then I extended because I found that it was so good for me, both physically and mentally. So even if it's 5 minutes, I tell my guitar students this: take 5 minutes in practice. Oh, I don't have time. You don't have 5 minutes in your day. So if you take 5 minutes, wake up 5 minutes early, or once you get those kiddos to bed, 5 minutes of, okay, tell your husband, your partner, whatever, I'm gonna take 5 minutes and I'm just gonna do some meditating. I'm gonna do some breathing, and I will link in the show notes to a couple different really good free apps that can help you. And it doesn't
Right.
have to be clear your mind,
Yeah.
meditation.
Yeah.
It can be as simple as breathe in for 4, hold for 4, breathe out for 4. It can
Yeah.
be
Yeah.
anything like that,
Yeah.
you
Box
know?
breathing. Sure. Sure. Yeah, I would love to come back to what you said though about the one of the biggest excuses that it's not, and it's a normal excuse to have. I'm not ragging on anybody, but when we feel like we don't have enough time, well, I don't have, I gotta go, I gotta go, I gotta go.
Mm-hmm.
Again, I think it comes back to that we haven't given ourselves the mental space to realize we all have the same 24 hours, and it is not a matter of time, it's a matter of priorities. So you
Yeah,
prioritize that first, which is, and again, not a necessarily a bad thing, but if we're feeling stressed, anxious, and uncertain, then that is the bad thing. If by the way, if our teaching and our pedagogy is affected by our mental health, which mine was incredibly,
I
I
bet.
was one of the worst teachers I ever was, lashing out at every student that wasn't like, I mean, it was just a mess because I was a mess. It's just a mirror.
Right.
So I
Mm-hmm.
think when it comes down to that, another practical thing people can do is simply try a zero-based schedule. So for the 24-hour period, or if you want to say 16-hour period, however long you're sleeping, you're gonna make sure that there is zero space. So if you're using, say, Google Calendar, you want colors throughout the entire day. You're like, Kevin, what are you talking
Mm.
about? You're going to work the entire day? No, no, no. You're not going to work the entire day, but you're going to actually schedule that 30-minute block for you to scroll through Instagram. You're going
Mm-hmm.
to schedule that hour block for Netflix. Because then all of a sudden, when you schedule it, then later on, you've scheduled your 5 minutes of box breathing. Then all of a sudden, you're like, if I'm scrolling through Instagram, here's the disconnect. I I have that time later in my schedule. I should be doing what I intended to do earlier. So,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And it's interesting because I like to be scheduled. I thrive on being scheduled, but I don't do it well. So I have just redesigned my whole office, and in the process of redesigning, because I'm now working almost full time in my office. So I really felt like I needed a good space. And I bought myself this, I've tried planners and calendars and all kinds of different ways to schedule myself, and nothing worked. So what I did is I did go into my Google Calendar, and I did like zero-based or block scheduling.
Yep, yep, yep.
And I've scheduled out, okay, this is my workout time or my physical activity time, and I have it in one color. And then I've got my breakfast time and my shower time. And then I've got my, I'm trying to plan for social media. So I've got my social media time. And, if you live that way. And then the other thing I did is I just bought this like erasable. I found it at Target for $5. It was a to-do list. And
Okay.
I've just started like in erasable marker, putting out 5 things that I want to do during the day and checking them off one at a time. And I am finding that to be so freeing, because I end up like yesterday, I checked off 4 of my 5, and I was like, woo, I got things accomplished. And if you think about what you're getting accomplished, but you don't write it down, it's not as effective. That visual cue is so effective.
Yeah, and again, I think also where what I was mentioning with the zero-based schedule, I think that is a good exercise. I don't personally, I don't know if that's the best way to run the next, your entire life. That's and if it works for you, great. For me, it was an exercise to get into the space of okay, like if I was able, like for the rest of the day, I know exactly what my blocks are, but visually, I need that space for meetings and everything. So it was just more of an exercise. But yeah, I think as coming back to what I said, if we don't get ourselves in check, it will absolutely affect our students. And mine
Absolutely.
were 100% affected because in the beginning, I was great, and then by the end, I was not. It
Yeah,
was
yeah.
yeah.
Well, and this is pushing into the time of the year that we're recording this. It will probably go up in February,
Yeah.
maybe even very beginning of March. But we are pushing into, okay, we're going to spring break. And then after spring break, all bets are off. The kids think they're
Oh
done,
yeah.
and that makes it so challenging for everybody in the school. And
Mhm.
then, schedules start getting flip-floppy, and, things start just kind of gradually disintegrating schedule
Yeah.
wise and everything else. And that makes it so much more challenging.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, because I mean, even still, like when your for instance, like when your students enter your classroom, they know they're so good at that registering what mental state you're in.
Oh, yeah.
So it's just immediate, and the rest of the lesson will be dictated, for the most part, on that intentional start or unintentional start that you had based on how well you're dealing. I mean,
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
a
Well,
very
they
difficult
read it
thing.
on your face. They are so good at reading it. And I have had students, especially those little ones, that they come in and they're like, you need a hug. And they, I mean, they see it on your face and you're like, whoa, okay, you're right. I did need a hug.
Oh, that's great. Yeah. Yeah,
So
we're
tell
very.
me, go ahead, go ahead.
No, 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 no. I was no. Please go for it.
So let's talk a little bit. Do you have anything else to add as far as teacher mental health, anything like that? And
Yeah, I'll say this: it's a journey. This is not going to be, a fix. it's something that needs to be addressed every day. When we say mental health, it doesn't have to be maybe as serious as that sounds. You and I come from a time where it's like, if I said to someone I had an issue with my mental health, they'd be like, put him in a white lab coat, get him out of here, strap
Yeah.
him up, put him in a padded room, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And now it's such a common and accepted and encouraged word to use, but it is a ongoing practice. It's something that we have to, just like we work out with our physical health, we work out every day because it doesn't stop. So it's just something that we want to change from something that we have to fix to something that we get to do. That's all.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes sense. So, what can you tell us about you have, there's so many mental health issues in schools from kindergarten, pre-K, all the way through. How, as a music teacher, when we don't know those students very well, we know them,
Right. Sure.
especially if we've been teaching them year after year. But what I should say is we haven't had them like we don't have them every day, day in and day out. How do we handle those situations where, we know something's going on, but maybe we don't know any details and we're not going to get any details, that sort of thing.
Well, the last thing you just said was interesting, and maybe if you can elaborate that, because the first thing that comes to my mind is making sure you do as best of a job you can to develop relationships with the classroom teachers.
Hmm.
So, thinking of them as, an extension to what you do it versus, I mean, listen, let's face it, a lot of times classroom teachers and general music teachers do not see eye to eye for many different reasons, and there's a lot of kind of tension sometimes for whatever reason. Well, and especially for pull-out instrumental teachers. Oh, that's like you're
Oh
taking my
yeah.
kid away from me for this. So it's fine. But if we're able to develop relationships as best we can, really make them our allies and friendly colleagues, that information is going to come to you proactively. I mean, they're going to
Yeah.
share that right away. So you mentioned like if we're not going to get that, can you elaborate on?
So it's in a lot of schools, and I think you're right because I have tried to develop those relationships, but a lot of times it's like us against them, so to
Right.
speak. And one of the things I speak about a lot in on this podcast and everywhere else is that we are part of the team, and even if your colleagues do not see you as part of the team, do not see you as a real teacher,
Sure.
so to
Sure.
speak, because there is a lot of that goes on. The best way that you can help them to see you like that is to come to them and be like, I noticed Jaden, there's something going on with him. I've noticed this is happening, and what are you doing in class that can help? Or, you're right, to start those conversations, go see the guidance counselor, make sure that your colleagues know that you care enough to ask the questions and that you care, they need to know that. And I think a lot of times they don't know that unless you develop that relationship.
Yeah, and again, I think it's even more so than developing the relationship with the intention to, oh, I'm going to just help my kids by, getting friendly with John. Like it's not even like that.
No,
It's
no.
more like a holistic thing where, and especially many of you out there listening may not even be in the same building full time. You may be just popping in between two buildings, three, whatever, a couple days a week, whatever. Um, you have to approach, I think, the relationship with a lot of with a very kind of relaxed nature. Like
Mhm.
if you are going to try to have a conversation with John, the fifth grade teacher or whatever, and this is all serious, and it very well may be a serious situation. You have to talk with them, but if you're putting more pressure on their plate, they're not necessarily going to want to, be so open and friendly with you. You want to, especially when you start that gig or start that year or whatever, you're there to have a good, hey, I'm a music teacher. Let's have a good time. Hey, and,
Right.
and just make everybody's day brighter by,
Mhm.
shedding that joy you have for music and your students. Then they're going to be so much more willing to have those one-off conversations, just like, hey, what's up? Like, really make them your, for lack of a better word, friends. I mean, that's kind
Yeah,
of,
yeah.
I think they're going to want to talk about, Sally and Chris in the class or whatever, because they know if you, the music teacher, can get through to them, well, that's only going to help them too. So maybe the music
Yeah.
teacher is the key, right? Like, so yeah, I think that's part of it. And I mean, there's a million different ways that we can do that. I think also the music class may be the only outlet for, well, I know for a fact that may be the only outlet for some students to really not only express themselves, but be that one time of day that they're truly happy, whatever, I love those boom whackers. All right, this is my favorite thing,
Yep.
whatever it is, right? Um, you know, that if they're in that state, they might be willing to share something that they've never shared with anybody else. So you want to
Hmm.
also make that an option too. Now, this may open up a can of worms, but I think it's something that some people will experiment with. I think you could say, listen, if you ever want to, from maybe from some of the older students, if you ever want to write and tell me something in confidence or write me a note, you can have little musical messages, whatever, and have a little box and say, listen, you could write me anything that's on your mind, no one has to know about it, you could pop it in the box, I'll read it, and you can put any parameters you want with that, but making the students accessible to you as well in that short
Yeah.
40-minute period of once a week, is tricky as well. So I think
No,
that there's
but
a lot of different
they
ways you could do that. So
they do develop relationships with you, and they
yeah.
do, you develop relationships with them, and not everyone, of course, because you've got so many students, but definitely there are going to be students who feel comfortable talking to you, and that's a great point.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, music is one of those things that that's why we do what we do. It's so special.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. So, what else is there anything else you wanted to talk about, to share with my audience?
Yeah, I think what I want to share is the fact that you hear this from a lot of different people in a lot of different facets, but I don't think you hear it enough. I think you have to understand like what you do is so magical and so incredible. And it's the reason I'm telling you this is because it's something that I did get to do for a while and I don't get to do it anymore. I
Hmm.
am not, conducting a band every day, and I am envious of that. Granted, I'm doing exactly what I'm put here on this earth to do, and I really mean that. And there's elements of teaching. I get to work with kids, but nowhere near as often as I'd like.
Yeah.
What you get to do is absolutely magical because, again, um, if I ask you what the name of your seventh grade English teacher was, 90% of you will not know. But if I ask you what the name of your fourth grade orchestra teacher was, 100% of you will know.
Oh, yeah.
And that right there is the magic that we create and why we need you all so, so much. So, yeah.
Awesome. Thank you for saying that.
Mm.
So, if someone wanted to get in touch with you, are there resources available for music teachers, for students? How do they get in touch with you? Tell us
Yeah.
a little bit about that.
Yeah, yeah. So if you want to stop by and say hello, you can find me on social media anywhere. Just type in my name, Kevin Mecchella, two C's, two L's. And if you wanted to kind of formally look at what I do with some middle school and high school students, you can go to kevinmecchella.com and see the whole outline of the Upgrade My Decisions program. Um, and interestingly enough, I have just very recently decided to be a little bit more formal about my coaching practice for students with, for lack of a better word, stage fright. So one of the things that I battled with in my high school and college career was stage fright and performing pressure, and which had affected my ability to play. Only in later in my life did I figure out exactly how to beat that, or not necessarily beat it, but completely, get over that so it doesn't affect my playing. And I'm going to be starting to offer that as a coaching practice to students one-on-one, at least for now. So again, that will be more of a formal process will be launched fairly soon. But if you wanted to inquire about that, feel free to, like I said, drop me a line on either on social or my website.
So cool. That's a very needed thing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
'cause
trust me.
I
It's
have stage fright when it comes
sure.
to, I can talk to people, I can get up and, but singing in front of people, not my little songs that I do on the
Right,
podcast or
right.
whatever, but to actually do serious singing, it's not terrible stage fright, but it definitely stops me from doing a
Sure.
lot, which is sad.
Well, it comes back to to leave you with the one-liner, comes back to Joe Alessi, the principal trombonist of the New York Phil. He said, playing music is your job. He said, do your job. He says, does a secretary when they go into work get scared about typing? Nope. Just do your job. And that's the first initial mindset shift we need to make among many others. But yep.
Love it.
Awesome.
Well, thank you, Kevin, so much for coming on. I feel like we could have talked for 2 more hours because there's a
100%,
lot.
Jeanette. Thank
There's a lot.
you. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Well, that's all I have for you today. But before I go, I want to remind you, keep learning, keep growing, and keep being fabulous you.